Good morning. Beautiful day today. I'm here by our little old cabin. We sure had lots of fun at that shack. It hasn't changed much. It has new owners now, but there's lots of memories here. And by the way, my name is Myra. Okay, here's a white pine tree.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and we planted that.
Yep, and it is huge now.
And
It's
then
got to be 40 feet high.
when Doris and Harry and George and Rita and I and Dad were here snowmobiling, that little tree was so tiny, just the top of it stuck up out of the snowbank. And they ran right over it with the snowmobile, and I was afraid they had ruined it. But look, it didn't hurt it any. It's still growing.
It's got to be 40 to 50 feet high.
Isn't that great?
Yep, it's beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Perfectly straight.
Yeah. And after Dad was gone, then I came here to the cabin, just me and Tootie for a few times. And at one time I was over here on the side.
Sure.
Yeah, so they got a big shed there now, which is new. I didn't have that. But I was placing little bricks on the path, because as the trees get older and the roots stick up, and so many times we would stumble over those roots. And so I was putting bricks down to the toilet. And I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye, and I glanced over that way, and believe it or not, there is a bear right behind the cabin. He was like, how far from me? 30 feet probably.
And what did you tell the bear?
And I was on my hands and knees like that, putting those bricks down, and I raised up and I saw, hey, what are you doing here? And then he kind of loped down, but he walked over toward some more brush on the other side of the privy, and he stood up and he clawed on the trees. He was marking his territory.
Wow.
And my heart started pounding like nobody's business. I came running into the cabin, and I said, Tootie, look, there's a bear out there. And when you tell her anything, she'd usually say, oh, yeah, When I said, there's a bear, she said, yeah. I said, well, look. She said, oh, my goodness, there is. Right,
And what's that, Mom?
right there's the brick that I was laid in the ground
Oh.
when I saw that bear.
Go here.
And here's the root.
Yeah. And here's the outhouse. That was a two-holer.
Today, the fact that I have oxygen is a vital part of my daily life has nothing to do with the story that I'm going to tell you. I want to make that clear. When I started to write my memoirs, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
When I decided it was time to write my memoirs down, I started with those things that are most prominent in your mind. And as I was writing, then that triggered other thoughts and other incidences came to mind. And one of the most vivid memories that I have happened in midwinter in 1949. I was not yet married. It was shortly after a heavy snowfall, and I mean it was a gorgeous snowfall. Every tree was just hanging with snow. You know, like a pretty Christmas card. Kids made angels in the snow. We all did that, right? I was driving with my boyfriend at that time. His name was Nick. He is no longer with us. But we had, we enjoyed each other's company. And it was a beautiful winter day, driving down the county road. It was a blacktop road. The snowplow had gone through the day before and made huge banks alongside the road. It was just immense. The kind that you talk about, the good old days, you know? Well, this was one of those kind of snowfalls. And he was a smoker, and he's smoking as we're driving along, and he was driving. And he said to me something that really surprised me, and it led to some excitement. He said, "Did you ever see how much nicotine there is in one puff of a cigarette?" Well, no, of course not. My dad wasn't a smoker, so how would I know? Well, I'll show you. He said, "But I'm going to need your help." He took a white handkerchief out of his pocket and said, "Now I'm going to blow the smoke through this hanky, and I want you to put your hand on the wheel and you steer. Now you watch the road, now don't watch me." So we're cruising along about 45 miles an hour, having a good old time, and he decides he's going to do this little demonstration for me. And I can remember vividly putting my hand on the steering wheel, and I'm watching this handkerchief here and the smoke just billowing out on the other side. It is as vivid in my mind today as if it happened yesterday. I will never forget that. Nor will I ever forget what happened next. The car went up over a couple of bumps and stopped short, and whoosh, just that quick, we were covered with snow. The windshield was totally covered. The side windows were covered with snow. We could not see out. I was kind of scared, you know. And we looked at each other, and he pushed the car door open. And I mean, he had a push against the snow. And when he stepped out, he sank knee deep in the snowbank. It was that deep. He said, well, this is a fine one. And he would try to walk around the car to check the back of it. And I could hear him saying, well, this is a fine one. This is a fine one. And every time he said it, he'd have accent on a different word. This is a fine one. This is a fine one. Well, it was almost funny. Almost funny. And then he came back to the car and he said, well, it looks like we're in the ditch. I said, well, maybe I should get out and help push it out. He said, no, you stay right where you are. Okay, that was kind of like an order. So I sat there. He said, I'll go down the road here to this farmer and he'll come with the tractor to pull us out. So I sat there and waited for him. And while I waited, my mind wandered. And I'm thinking, holy cats, we're not even married yet. And he didn't even cuss. Is that why he chose his words so carefully? What would my parents say? Well, maybe we better not tell them. So it wasn't long. He came back with the farmer, with the tractor, pulled us out. Still to this day, I don't know if he paid him or what the transaction was. I didn't ask. As we got back on the road and he tried driving, it was hard to steer the car. And he was afraid maybe something broke or got bent underneath. I found out later there were big rocks in that ditch. And they, of course, were covered with snow. But as we went over the bumps, then the clumps of snow would fall out, and it was much easier to steer. Now you have to keep in mind that tracks remain in the snow, whether it be a rabbit track or a track from kids playing in the snow or a car running in the ditch. Those tracks will stay there until either we get some fresh snow and they're covered up, or until the sun melts it and it fades away. And so it was a few days later. My dad was driving with my so-called, well, I guess you could call him my boyfriend. I know, I never use that term, but he, incidentally, he was going to go and help my dad cut firewood. So, having accomplished that, they were driving down the road, bringing him back up north. It was going from Forest County to Antigo, a distance of about 50 miles. And on the way, my dad is driving along, and he came to this infamous place where we had our nicotine demo. And he said, oh, Mick, just look at there where some damn fool ran in the ditch. And later, when Mick told me that, he added, but of course, I couldn't tell him who that fool really was. Now, in conclusion, I want you to know something that about this. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I'm sorry. Erase that. I neglected to tell you that that handkerchief was laying on the floor. We temporarily had forgotten all about that nicotine demo. And we picked it up and I looked at it, and here's this white hanky with a huge round stain in the middle. Now you might try to wash that stain out of that hanky. But suppose you did it over and over and over again, and that stain would get darker and darker, and the tar and the nicotine would collect on that until eventually there wouldn't be any air going through it. That's what happens to your lungs. I stand here today to tell you I have never smoked a cigarette in my entire life. But 2 years or so after this fancy demonstration, if I can call it that, I contracted tuberculosis. And I was confined to a Hickory Grove sanatorium. And during that time, I spent about 3 years there, a little bit older. And it was necessary that I have lung surgery to try to get rid of some of this. They gave me medication to heal up the scattered parts around, but the nucleus of it was so big the medication wouldn't attack it. So they thought the best thing to do would be to remove it. So I had surgery on the left lung, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's 2 lobes in the left lung, and they removed the entire upper left lobe. And then I also had surgery on the right lung, and they removed the upper right lobe and a little wedge from the lower lobe. So, since then, since that happened, I gave birth to 2 children, one of which is here today. I lived a comparatively normal life, enjoyed my life. And I've only been on oxygen the last 10 years since they discovered, they called it COPD. So that brings me where I am today. And I'm enjoying life as much as I can. I curb my activities. I don't go bowling, but I keep score. And there's lots of other things I don't do, like playing golf, but I drive the car, and that costs excitement one time too.
We won't go there.
So my friends, American Lung Association has always been near and dear to my heart. When I was a little kid in school, we had a picture of Emily Bissell in our classroom, and we sold Christmas seals for 1 penny apiece. And my parents lived on a little dinky farm. We lived in a log house. Mother made meals out of practically nothing. But yet we were able to find a few pennies laying around, and we would buy Christmas seals. And it's interesting because every year they are a different design. I wish I knew what the design was for 1949. We could probably find that. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I want you to know that American Lung Association is fighting for air, and nobody can appreciate fresh air any more than I do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.